Afternoon. For those who don't know me, my name is Paul Kroner, and this is my gallery and my working studio space as well. And I'm really grateful to have Alan and Stephen and company here for this show. I think it's a very impressive body of work, an incredible undertaking, and some wonderful artwork and a great story. A little bit about the gallery. Next month marks the 5th anniversary of Studio Kroner. It opened up on April 15th. I'm pretty excited about that, and so excited that in the shameless self-promotion front, I'm doing my first ever solo show here at the gallery. I figured it was safe. With that, I'm going to introduce Alan. Alan is a visionary educator, a connector, and I know that firsthand. He's a major connector. And a food systems leader whose groundbreaking work is redefining how communities engage with sustainability, storytelling, and place, and artwork. As the creator and leader of the Foodshed, Cincinnati Foodshed Art Atlas, Alan spent over 5 years building a one-of-a-kind multimedia chronicle of Cincinnati food system. I spent 40 years as a graphic designer. I put together a lot of publications. This is an incredible publication. The undertaking to manage that file is frightening to me.
It's a terabyte.
Which is a lot of data. So I really applaud the effort, the endeavor, the stamina, the wherewithal to do that, and the ability for your team to organize all that information into this beautiful publication. So again, just like this. The book was published in 2024 and features contributions from more than 160 different collaborators, including farmers, artists, policy advocates, and nonprofit leaders. The books are for sale. All of it helps Alan, so buy one if you haven't. There's 2 versions of it. There's the fancy premium edition, and then the people's version. That's all I'll say. Thank you for being here. Enjoy the conversation, and again, feel free to linger afterwards and look at the art some more. Thank you.
I'd like to thank everybody for being here on a beautiful sunny Saturday afternoon. As Paul mentioned, my name is Alan. Please call me Alan. I'd be happy to tell you more about the book after the panel. We'll hang around for a little bit. But in the interest of all of our time, we're going to go and get started with the formal event. I'm going to introduce one of my collaborators for the show, many of who you may know, Steve Kroeger. Special educator and action researcher for 30 years. He uses his current research to focus on supporting voice. Steve is involved in national and international projects, including in Palestinian West Bank and in Ireland. While teaching, graphic narrative emerged as a powerful medium for expression. Since the last election, volunteering in a food pantry, doing Spanish translations, started thinking about abundance and scarcity of food. Of course, for those of you paying attention, the recent removal of a lot of dollars from SNAP is a primary example. That is actually one of the impetus that Steve reached out to me. Comics help tell stories of people who are doing amazing work of collecting, growing, cooking, distributing, educating, and serving in our regional food shed. Through illustrations and so welcome, Steve. Steve is going to be the primary facilitator for the event. I'm going to play backup, and he and I are going to introduce our 5 amazing participants. Barb, I'm going to ask you to come right over here so you can be in the same line as everybody else. Barb is my second garden mentor. I spent 3 years as an assistant gardener at Gorman Heritage Farm, where I learned how difficult and challenging and laborious it can be to grow food. Barb still does that full time. She's been a farmer for how many years, Barb?
13 and a half at least.
Yes, 13 and a half at least. So I guess I'll just, should I introduce her?
It sounds like you are.
Yeah, here we go. Barb Liphart has been passionate about healthy food for decades. After beginning her studies at Purdue University, she finished her BS degree at Union Institute and University in Environmental Studies, concentrating on food, food production, and food politics. Barb walks her talk by growing as much of her own food on her urban farm in the Cincinnati neighborhood of North Side as she can. 2 vegetable gardens, 6 fruit trees, 4 nut trees, various berry bushes, asparagus, and kiwi are shared with her 2 boys and neighbors. She promotes local eating by having a meat CSA, a herd share, and Gorman Heritage Farm CSA share, and that is the CSA that I helped to start with Barb back in 2013. She promotes local eating, Barb also promotes sustainable living by reducing her global footprint in about 33 ways throughout the year. I would encourage you to ask her about each and every one. Quote from Barb, "I'm thrilled to be working at Gorman Heritage Farm. Finally, my career matches my lifestyle."
Okay, so thank you. Welcome. I am introducing Amaha Selassie, our gentleman on the second to the right over there. Amaha is an Afro-futurist, a peace builder, a social healer, a freedom fighter, a network weaver, a student of cooperation, and a lover of humanity. He's an associate professor of sociology at Sinclair Community College in Dayton, Ohio. Amaha is a practitioner scholar and a participatory action researcher dedicated towards building bridges of trust, healing historical wounds, and harnessing the unique gifts and talents of every human being as we press towards a just and equitable society. His areas of interest include health and education equity, praxis, cooperative economic development, dismantling structural violence, and getting the voice of marginalized communities into the center of public policy to emerge structures of belonging that acknowledge the dignity and worth of every human being. He is a co-founder and board chair of the Gem City Market, a community-driven effort to address food apartheid through a food co-op dedicated to increasing access to fresh fruits and vegetables within West Dayton. Welcome, Amaha.
Next, I would like to introduce Dominic Bly, a chef, educator, and cultural researcher whose work lives at the intersection of food, art, and embodied learning. Holding a Master's of Arts Education from the University of Cincinnati, he serves as the Director of Education at Garden of Joy Culinary Academy, designing programming for young people navigating trauma and systemic barriers. He works from the conviction that love and care have the power to transform our most painful experiences into joy. With this mindset, he treats the kitchen as a sanctuary for healing and connection. By centering the cultural knowledge students bring to the table, Dominic explores how shared food stories can cultivate authentic belonging and legacy rooted in love. Please welcome Dominic.
All right, Shannon Carr is an entrepreneur and visionary who turned her passions for gardening and feeding people into Isaiah 55 Incorporated, a Cincinnati-based nonprofit dedicated to growing food, cooking it, and giving it away, completely free of charge. Through rescued food, fresh harvest, and creative dishes like her signature carrot pie at Garden of Eden, Shannon works to ensure everyone has access to healthy meals. Whether she's in the garden, the kitchen, or passing out food bags at local schools, which I will add with a love note saying I love you on them. Her mission is simple. Healthy food is a right and it should be free.
Yes.
I would like to introduce Peter Huttinger, an artist by training whose primary interest is creating collaborative spaces in the world. Influenced by Noam Chomsky, the Situationist, and alternative space, gallery movement. He's interested in organizing opportunities for peer-centered education and supporting others in collective action as we seek self-regulation within the commons. What began as art installations evolved into over 20 years of community garden efforts. Peter has long been involved with Home Meadow Song Farm, a homestead focused on experiential learning, regenerative land stewardship, gardening, animal husbandry, the arts, education, and social renewal. He is the first garden manager at the Village Green in Northside, a nonprofit dedicated to sharing community resources, increased self-sufficiency, and advocating for a healthier and greener world. Peter also worked as the community garden coordinator for the Civic Garden Center for the past 6 years and has been at Turner Farm for their community garden program since 2014. Please welcome Peter.
All right, without further ado, I'm going to ask a series of questions. We'll kind of get the discussion rolling, and then at some point we'll just kind of open up to kind of questions, comments from whoever wants to ask or make a statement. We wanted to start with giving them each an opportunity to kind of say where I'm from kind of thing at the very beginning, maybe 2 or 3 minutes, if you can keep it there. So the first question is, what drew you into this work? Kind of an origin statement, and I don't know if we just want to go left or right or just anyone pick. Anyone feel like starting or?
I'll start.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Oh, how did I get started? I knew that I grew up pretty much poor, hungry, and I just didn't want anybody else to go through what I went through. And so I took my 2 hobbies and to come up with this nonprofit. And so I have a heart for the people. I hate to see people hungry. It's getting really bad out there, and I'm noticing that, you know, as we give food bags away, people are crying. People should not have to cry for food here in the United States. You know, it's getting bad. You know, there's even a food shortage with rescue food. And so we have to be very strategic on what we have. And so that's where my heart is. I want to make sure everybody eats. And I hate to see leftover. What y'all do with the leftover food?
We've got a plan for that.
I'm taking it to my kids.
Okay, I hate to see leftover food. Let's not throw nothing away.
Go ahead. Actually, yeah.
How did I get started? I guess, like, from the very beginning, I've kind of always had a life surrounded by food and people who cook. Grew up in a family full of cooks. My dad was the best cook I ever knew. He would come home after, like, 12-hour days, 9 o'clock, and just like jump straight in the kitchen and start making, like pasta fagioli or something like super involved that, was just a lot of effort and a lot of love and care after spending the entire day working for us. And so, I've always loved food. I worked at the Oriental Walk, and I still work at the Oriental Walk. As a matter of fact, I came from a shift at the Oriental Walk this morning, so apologies to my fellow panelists if I still smell like sesame oil. But I've always been just fascinated by food. It's always been a big passion of mine. And for one reason or another, I wound up in an art education master's program at DAP, partially because I was friends with some of the professors, partially because they offered to pay for the whole thing. It was something to do. And I wound up there after my father had passed kind of recently. And so it was a way for me to kind of do something adventurous, and I had no idea that food was going to be a part of that story, but I'm not a trained artist, and so I was kind of finding it difficult to submit things for art-based assignments, and then for one of my assignments I decided to submit some tacos and some gumbo, and it seemed like professors liked it, it seemed like my classmates really enjoyed it, and so I started kind of wondering why there weren't more people cooking in the arts, and why there wasn't any sort of cooking-based education that I was really taught in school. What happened to home economics, and so after a long time kind of researching those questions and those problems, I ended up kind of devising a game plan if I were to ever start theoretically a culinary school, how we would do it, that it would be free and that it would be family centered. And then I saw a flyer for Garden Joy Culinary Academy that had just opened, and without a chef and without kind of an educational plan, but they had the space and they had the students and they had their values. Like focused on nonviolence education, creating a third space for students after school to keep them safe and nourish them with food. So after a couple phone calls, I sent over my blueprint for how to start a culinary school, and about a year later, I'm here and I'm teaching kids to cook 3 days a week now. And
I'm trying to think, how did I get started? So I think I'll start with a little bit of Dayton geography. So Dayton is an extremely hyper-segregated community where we have a river that divides us, and so the west side is 98% African American, the east side is 94% white with Turkish, Latino, and African refugees. And because of the intentional underdevelopment of the west side, we kept just trying to find ways to develop, for lack of a better word. That wasn't our intention, I think originally, but it was just how do we improve the living conditions and the quality of life for residents, because I just kept feeling that we're more than this. I did now I'm big into asset-based development and all these things, but back then I was this can't be it. I know we're more than this, And so, I actually first started by just wanting to heal relationships, and I learned a lot up here from Peter Block actually, but the notion of how to restore relationships in the community and how to ground love and forgiveness in the community. And then about 2014, this report came out that said that we were second in the nation for food insecurity, especially for kids, And so so we had a meeting to tell the community about it. And I'm a sociologist, and so we overlaid this map called the opportunity map with a redlining map, and we're it's clear that areas that were redlined are low and very low opportunity, and areas that were green are high and very high for access to opportunity. And so then from there, it was what do we want to do? And a couple of us came together and we had the audacity of what if we build a grocery store, And it was our 5th grocery store, so no big deal. So everybody yeah, right, y'all gonna build a grocery store, And so, it took time, but the more we do, the more I research it, it's every red line community is suffering from food apartheid, meaning that the intentional imagination to underdevelop an area, I call it the canary in the coal mine, that if there's food insecurity in the area, there's a plethora of other issues that are also building a web together, So now it's just learning how to get the voice out and how to help the community realize its power to change the patterns in our community, that we don't gotta wait or ask permission, but that we have the ability to shape and practice the world we want to see amongst ourselves.
Yes.
Guess I'm next in line. I guess it's my coming to working in community gardens. I identify myself as a community gardener, not a farmer. Is that it was more about leaving one thing and going to another. I became so disillusioned with the visual arts. I love art and I love artists, but the infrastructure that's built up around it became for me, my point of view, increasingly corrupt and self-serving. But so I somehow, a transition was also taking place in my artwork where I was going from representational work that might be political to things that are more metaphorical to moving more into physical, building things out of materials that went through a physical process of decay. And that's a very simplified version of it. So it just sort of naturally, at one point, we started community gardening, was my work was going through that, and I just slipped from one world into the other. And so that's where I am now. And also, as an artist, I was interested in, collectives, people working together. Also, I took some training with Peter Block, which was helpful, and as well as some other people. I worked for an art collector too, Stephen Covey, which I think I got his name right, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which is this sort of kind of disgusting thing in one level. But another one, it was about ethical behavior in business and recognizing people's gifts and allowing them the space to exercise those gifts. And so, it was a very commercial business model, but it also kind of affected and dovetailed into what Peter was doing a lot. So that was very good. So then just got into gardening, participating in community gardens, through a few different things, and ended up running the Gardens at Village Green and restoring the greenhouse there for, I guess, about a year or two. And then started working at the Civic Garden Center, and then down for 10 years now, 11th year going up with the Turner Farm. And one thing I just, in closing, I'll say is that during that transition of working in community gardens, it started out like everybody had a bed, and you paid a fee for the bed, which is fine. But the thing that always amazed me is like how people would take a bed and not take care of it. And so they just kind of went on and on and on. And so after I left the Civic Garden Center, I was sort of kind of wanting to do something other than community gardening. And Turner Farm reached out to me, Megan Rambrill, who was there at the time, and asked me to take over the community garden program. I went in with this grand idea thinking that they would just tell me to screw off. And it was that we wanted to set everything up as a mini farms, CSA model of sorts, and where there isn't sort of private territory within the garden. And the director, Robert Edmondson, said, sounds good to me, and then I was trapped. Went on from there. So, yeah, our main garden is Price Hill, it's a half acre, and we have other smaller projects. But we also we're redoing our education program constantly, and like the last couple of years, we're trying to embed ourselves in different programs to provide support educational in agriculture or community gardening or growing fruits and vegetables. And we do some classes, but we're finding extended kind of personal relationships with students or adults. I'm finding to be much more satisfying personally, but also I think a much more productive way of teaching people how to be self-sufficient and to grow food.
I guess I'm next. I guess mine's more of a selfish selfish reason for growing food. I love food, and I love, if you grow up on a garden food and then you start eating grocery food, it's like, oh, there's a difference. So, the taste of food that you grow yourself is much more rewarding. So, and also the cost, when you want to maybe do organic food and then you go to some of the grocery stores and you see how expensive it is, it's like, wait, I can buy a whole pack of seeds for the cost of this bundle of kale. It's like, why not? I mean, my yard is big enough. Why not just grow in my own yard? So I think I've had a garden for, 59, 58 years. Pretty much all my life I've had a garden everywhere I live. So, even if it's just containers here and there, but it's really a selfish way, because I love to eat and I love to cook food. So, but at Gorman, I've been at Gorman for 13 and a half years now. I really love it, and just the people I work with, and then the volunteers who come in. It's just a world of making connections and building community and just talking with people about gardening and encouraging them to, well, you have a little bit of space in your yard, you could do this or you could do that, and the packets of seeds are not that expensive, so you don't have to spend $500 for all this other stuff. Just get some seeds, put them in the ground. Mine's a little bit more simple.
Barb would often say to me, pinch me for being paid to garden.
The other thing you'll get a sense of is, as these 5 lovely people talk, is what a joy it was for Alan and I to interview them and anticipating creating some graphic stories with them. So that was so you're going to hear more as we go. Another question I'll just kind of throw out there for you, kind of get this rooted in humanity, is who do you picture when you think about why this work matters?
Who do I picture? On Tuesdays, we go to Roberts Elementary and we do a lesson. We bring food and we give away food bags. And this one little boy in particular, he's a little thing, but he takes as many bags as he can carry, pull, and everything because his family needs food. And then to see these kids, because we allow them to eat as much as they want. And we had a big old pot of goulash the other day. And to see little kids eating 2 and 3 servings and wanting more, and we usually leave there with no food. That's who I get up to do this for, you know. My knees be hurting, my back, my leg, I have a hot flash, menopause. But that little boy right there in particular, he's gonna get me up. Yeah. He's gonna get me up.
To kind of second that answer as well, I feel like, you know, the kids, I think, seeing just the curiosity that they have for food, for me, is really what kind of gets me up in the morning to start prepping lessons for them. I feel like, because we have a couple of kids that, you know, when they get in the kitchen, they immediately want to just start like messing with spices, kind of seeing what the new kind of produce haul was for the day. Like, what are we making today? Like, can I season my own meatballs today? And like all that sort of stuff. And seeing the kids like really like buy into the joy of cooking, I think for me, it reminds me of how I was raised when I was younger, and you know, my younger cousins in the family, and just seeing that kids can really, I don't know, express a joy for cooking that honestly a lot of cooks and chefs that I know seem to have kind of lost over the years, right? A lot of chefs I know are not the happiest people, but you know, the kids when they're in the kitchen with me are some of the happiest people that I know, and yeah.
I think like, actually, I don't actually think of somebody, you know what I mean? But like, as I'm sitting here right now, I guess it would be, so like, one thing I forgot to mention was that like, before we opened up the store, you know, in Grace on Los High, that like, you had to take, if you didn't have a car, you had to take 2 buses to get to a grocery store. And it would be, it's about a 3-hour journey altogether, you know what I mean? And then, you know, counting on the size of your family, you know, do you bring multiple people with you, or do you take multiple trips a week? You know, you can only carry so many bags, you know what I mean, with you, you know? And so, being able, like when we first opened, and like, seeing people just being able to, you know, just walk to the store, get groceries, and walk back, you know what I mean? Like simple things become like, wow, that's like, it's so yeah, I think that is who I think about, of like how for so many years, because we had 40,000 residents and no full service grocery store. So like there was no grocery store on the west side. I'm not in Dayton. So like, you know, and so just the fact that like, you know, we had kind of accepted that for so long, yeah, like, oh, that's normal, you know what I mean? And like, you know, other communities, there's 2 or 3 grocery stores on the same block, literally, you know what I mean? But for us, we had 40,000 residents and none. So to me, it's like just seeing people being able to navigate and use their time differently because of being able to get more access to the grocery store, probably for me.
Yeah.
No, I guess for me, it's just, you know, I just really believe in the curative properties of soil at this point. And so having people work together in the garden, I said, I mean, that's the, you know, particularly in the current political climate, is I find it particularly depressing. But it's the one thing that kind of keeps me going, is that sort of bond with the soil. When I grew up in South Florida, playing in mangroves and, you know, fishing with hand lines off docks and stuff like that. So, and in the ocean, and so I was very connected with nature. And so moving up, when I moved to Ohio, which really was a big transformation, we was experiencing the change of seasons. And after I experienced that a couple of years, I never wanted to leave, or don't want to leave. And so doing that, and then later on, the involvement with the soil and seeing the transitions that go through the weather and then working with people, growing fruits and vegetables and then sharing them is I guess that's the picture that I love.
I'm really excited I just met Dom the other day, and so on Tuesday I'm going to bring some sweet potatoes, and just really looking forward to working with you and your kids. And it's all about the kids, really, getting kids involved in cooking and getting them excited about eating healthy food and knowing where the food comes from, and then teaching them, look, you can grow your own. You can do this yourself. Kids.
This question is a little bit about, maybe, I hope it's not too abstract, but it's what does food access and community food work look like from each of your perspectives right now? What does food access and community food work look like right now?
I think for me, it looks kind of like an open door, I suppose, and an open table. I think a lot of the people that we serve tend to be like family members of students that come and cook with us every day, people that, sometimes family friends of theirs, or just people that kind of walk in and want to join us for family dinner at the end of the night. And so, our team is fairly small, and so we can't, distribute food all over the city. We can't cook dinner for everyone that we would want to if we had the opportunity to, but having, the kids that we serve, every week and their family members come and enjoy dinner with us and, sit around the same table and we're passing around, the same plate of pasta to everybody. And to me, at least, that's on the smallest scale you could possibly think of, family dinner table. That's kind of what it looks like for us on a daily basis.
I think struggle. Like when we first opened the market, like there was a Kroger that had closed like 10 years before, and we were like so naive, like, man, we're gonna just open up this Kroger again. It'll be like 6 months, and then we'll be done. You know what I mean? And like, the density wasn't there, so we couldn't open it up there. And then like, the deeper we go into it, we're realizing that like Black and brown communities have literally no access to supply chains, like big supply chains that can like get food at a price that is like, and so it's a super struggle to like figure out like how to get food at a price point that can meet those that have the least amount of like the most vulnerable communities, how to make sure that they have access, you know what I mean? And we're still learning, and so it's a real struggle like across the country, I guess it's like and like the local, like, we also thought we could just build, local ecosystems, which we're working on building, but like translating local farming into the store supply chain has ended up being a lot harder than like we understood. So I also want to say like there's this technical piece that like, we didn't have these skills, you know what I mean? And so like we're kind of like learning as we go and making a whole bunch of mistakes, you know what I mean? But like trying to figure it out,
If I could briefly build on top of that, because I think you highlight a really important thing about just food access in general, that like, our piece on the education part of it can only really do so much. I mean, access is a systemic issue that, I guess the neoliberal answer to food access is just give people, more and more information and they'll be able to, think their way into getting a meal every night, and it just doesn't work that way. And so we do our best to teach our kids kind of the basics that you need, but it's still not enough. just on the education side.
We are seeing the policy barriers in place, right? GAP certification, good handling processes, serve safe, these were put in place for a reason, but they are now actually preventing communities from growing their own food. Here in Cincinnati, students at Aiken High School grow their own food. We are finally, after 10 years, close enough to getting CPS through GAP certification, that food into that cafeteria. We're not there yet, but we're the closest we ever been. Same with the challenges that we are facing here and hearing from the panelists.
Yes. Don't bag your lettuce.
My perspective, I'm a little different from everybody who sits here. I created a nonprofit, and I run a nonprofit, and we do what I want to do. And so, and nobody gets to tell me no. You know, there's no way around that. You know, I see things from a perspective of the have and have-nots. And so I am with the have-nots all day. And I am the spokesperson for them because we don't eat. And so I have to come up with different ways, and I have to be very creative. Some of the stuff that I do makes no sense. Why we have to do all of that. Like me, I own all of the land and we grow one. And so because I own the land, I have to fight every day. You know, you have the investors that want the land. You have the vandalism. And we ain't even gonna talk about the city of Cincinnati, okay? We have no water. We have absolutely no water access. But the other gardens do. There's so many things that we don't have, but we have more. We have more. I guarantee you, I give away more food a month than most.
Come on.
Because there's a lot of people who know what we go through and they just show up with food. And so, because they know I'm not going to say anything. We have so much food that sometimes we don't have much to, no place to take it or do with it. And so we have some wonderful volunteers and people who understand what we go. Miss Jenny is back there. Raise your hand. That's Miss Jenny right here. Miss Jenny has she's a farmer, Sovereignty Garden, Sovereignty Farms. She does a seed CSA. So if you need seeds, that's your girl right there. And so
I need your number.
Miss Jenny, it's me, my daughter, she's 27, and Miss Jenny. And we feed thousands of people. Thousands. Right. And we be in there cooking, create. We have to come up with meals that make no sense. And it's just what we have. And then I give like the goulash. That's just a whole bunch of, it was good though. In a pan, and then I say, oh, this is goulash. And then you go, and we go and teach and make it seem like this is a real recipe, you know? Like the carrot pie, you know? We just kept coming up with an excessive amount of carrots because nobody wants carrots. So I took everything that you put in sweet potato pie and I put it in the carrots and voila, okay? And let me tell you about the carrot pie. The carrot pie bought us before the Hamilton County Commissioners, okay? And with that, we ended up with a refrigerated van. And this refrigerated van all around the city. You never know who you're giving stuff to. And you have to be nice. You know, because you don't know what the other person, just because somebody look a certain way don't mean they have, you know, certain things, because some of these people who look a certain way, they want to give you stuff, okay? So you gotta be nice to everybody, you never know. But if you got some extra food, we'll take it. Not today, but we also have a restaurant up in East Price Hill. And how we ended up with this restaurant, because I was in a place like this and somebody was complaining about how the restaurant was not working. And so long story short, I'm joking, and he kept saying it's your restaurant. And so he said, give me an offer. We ain't got no money, so I gave him an offer. He said, sold. And so we paid for it and we got a restaurant. Never worked in a restaurant a day in my life. So to take this restaurant and try to feed as many people as possible. We feed so many people out of this little bitty restaurant. To the point where knees be hurting, back be hurting. The three of us be going back and forth with each other. But guess what? We get to eat and they get to eat. And we gonna eat. We gonna feel balanced. That's my perspective. Garden of Eaton. It's on the corner of Warsaw and Hawthorne. And so we have absolutely no hours of operation. It's when I feel like cooking. We go open up the door, we got some food, and we cook, we open it up, we feed everybody outside, then we take it over to the school. Miss Jenny is dropping food off at other organizations, other people. So there's people who get to eat and don't even know it came from us. Because we don't have to put our name on it. The purpose is as long as people eat.
All right.
Peter or Barb, want to add anything to that?
Well, I was going to say, just what they're talking about is decentralization. And I think that's the thing is how can we break into or work as smaller parts to contribute to the whole? And I think that's really, the crux of it. But also I like this discussion of food preparation and cooking as part of the element. And I know there's a number of organizations do like the Crock Pot Project and things like that. And I think that's a really important component where they're teaching young people or adults how to cook, but then also taking them home with the crock pot and also food so that they can prepare it themselves, so they become more independent. And anything we can do to get people off of highly processed foods, obviously, is a plus.
Right. I think that's, like how do we, I think for years, I never thought about the supply chain in like a real way, and then it was like, the supply chain seemed way bigger than us, but it's like what you're talking about is like, how are we like building our local supply chain, Like how are we literally building our food ecosystem, and we're talking about the commons or how to work collectively. It makes me wonder right now of like how we're moving from a triangle way of like society to a circle, and like one thing that I was going to mention, and I think you gave me a great segue, is like as I'm sitting here, it's made me think about like a liberation theology, right? Like there's something to like what we're doing of like the orientation towards the poor, and like how are we like walking with humanity instead of even doing things for, you know what I mean? Like what is that with, you know what I mean? And like knowing that like, oh, there's some kind of thing greater than us that's like moving and guiding us and like leading us deeper down this path, you know what I mean? And how like have compassion in the center of the circle, you know what I mean? Amongst human relationships through food.
I think what both of you are really talking about is like the extent to which relationships are the food system, and in so many key ways. Like in Alan's wonderful book, there's this very complicated diagram of the food system and all of its like many components. And we were talking, it's complicated on purpose just to show how many moving parts it all is. But it's really, it's made of people talking and cooking and growing and distributing. And there's been kind of this push in food systems research to kind of start talking about food systems in that kind of relational context, and start to talk about the relationship between someone who goes to Findlay Market and the butcher that they have a conversation with every week. And there's like so many components of what food is really doing when it's acting on us by bringing us together and having us form these relationships that are really like a really key component of the supply chain. That's where the humanity and the whole thing comes in, right? Because it looks like this big industrial machine, factory farms, like all of these things that you'll see in Food Inc., the documentary. But it's really just people that care, and people that want to eat and want to feed people and love to cook and love to grow and all those things. Yeah.
All right, this is going to be my last question. So I want you to start to think about what kind of comments or questions you have for our panelists here. And it's really a segue from what you all have been saying. Paul mentioned when we started, noting one of the characteristics of Alan is his ability to connect people. And that's a really powerful thing to do. And then that's what we're talking about here, these relationships. So the question is, where does collaboration across gardens, farms, and kitchens work? And where does it break down?
That's an easy one.
Oh, Lord,
Yeah.
the garden scene is cutthroat, okay? It is, you would think it's just growing food and everybody's happy and all of that. And especially when you're a nonprofit and you're looking for funding and things like, it's a mess out there, especially behind the scenes, you know. It is, I think if everybody was to come together, everybody would get to eat. But it does not work like that, you know. Everybody don't care. Some people just want to get paid. We work for free because we are for real. We want to get paid one day though. We still don't do the same thing when we get paid. But the garden scene, my earliest years in the garden scene is how I met Alan, okay? And I was very naive. I was very naive on gardening. I mean, I knew how to grow. I've never had any formal training on anything. It's just, I got an ideal and I'm gonna go do it. But it was Alan, and some days it would just be me and him in the garden, and he was to be showing me stuff and correcting me without letting me know he corrected me, you know, and I ain't know nothing about no gardening. And but I thank you for that. I thank you because you know you are a big piece of where I'm at today. And so, and even from there, it kept growing and growing and growing until you know we're here today. But in all of the pieces, somewhere in there, Alan is there. But the garden scene is something else. I think during COVID, Children's Hospital created the Safe Network. And they had a Shark Tank. And I was one of the winners of the Shark Tank. And so that brought a whole bunch of people together, a whole bunch of organizations together. And so it's also forcing people to work together. And even now, as one of the awardees of the Impact Award from the city, that $850,000 grant that they were talking about, there's a whole bunch of people, organizations that are involved in this. It's forcing change. People are going to have to work together. Organizations are going to have to work together because food, there's a scarcity going on, you know. Nobody's talking about it, but there is a food shortage. So we are going to be forced to work together. And those who don't want to work together, bye-bye, bye-bye.
That's real.
Because we have to feed the people. There is people, right now up there at the restaurant, there is people laying on the ground.
Yes.
You know, people sleep outside the restaurant because they feel comfortable right there. And they're arguing with the police saying, well, she said we can stay here. You know, and I did, but. And so, but yeah, going into 2027, I guarantee you, we are going to have to work together or you just got to leave. You have to leave. You're in the way.
Well, and I think to that point, the truly working together, right? Like, 'cause I feel like when collaboration is a real collaboration, and everybody's voice is heard, and everybody's expertise really gets to shine through in the project. That has yet to fail on me. But where collaboration doesn't. But I guess in a real small scale, and I think that's what I can really speak to is collaboration in the kitchen between the kids, between our volunteers. as soon as somebody's ego starts to take charge and they want to start not listening to other people's voices and they want to do things their way, that's kind of when things start to break down. And so, when we're in the kitchen, it's, we tend to cook without a book because I tend to let the kids dictate how the recipe goes, and they're salting to taste, they're checking to see if the chicken is done. We do use a thermometer, but I want and my Aunt Mary Beth is back there. She knows the hand test. When you squeeze your thumb like that, you can feel how cooked chicken tends to feel. So we tend to. Oh yeah, it's good. It works most of the time. If you're cooking for a bunch of people, don't rely on that. Be safe about it. But kind of central to how we like to teach and how we like to work with people is really working with people and letting them decide how something best should be done. One of our volunteers the other day, I had never made meatballs by myself, but I decided we're gonna have spaghetti meatballs for dinner, and she felt very strongly about, I make meatballs all the time, I want to season these meatballs, and I'm like, all right, you're seasoning those meatballs exactly how you want to do them. And I feel like collaboration is really just letting people play to their strengths, letting people bring what they want to bring to the table. And as soon as you kind of start to shut that down, or try to put people in boxes and say, this is what I need you to bring to the table, instead of letting them kind of explore it authentically, that's kind of when the breakdown has happened for us in the past.
With breakdown too, the way money gets distributed, sometimes I've noticed like hundreds of thousands of dollars have gone towards programs, and a whole bunch of people up here get a lot of money, and then you're working for free.
Right.
That's the thing that really bugs me to no end. It's like, how can, again, I guess it gets into, breaking things down, into a kind of a micro economy or something. How, and the money I've seen is just wasted. Like there's this myth of like, oh, we're going to give you a 100-foot high tunnel, and you're going to grow food year round. Or you're going to, my favorite one is like, maybe not my favorite, the one I hate the most is, oh, we're going to do aquaponics. Aquaponics now is like, I just want to smack somebody every time I do that. I'm not saying it can't work, but it's a complicated, you're running a greenhouse is really complicated. It's like when they could have they wanted to extend their seasons, use what we call low tunnels, like wires, plastic, remade, this big, this wide, dirt cheap.
Right.
To
make it yourself.
Yeah, and it's just like, they throw money in all the wrong places when they should be people who are competent and or are in a situation where they have a connection with the community, are getting the training on the job. You pay them a salary. Instead of somebody in a corporate, I don't know what, I don't want to get into the name of an organization. It's like crazy. But then I also have to say that where I've landed at Turner Farm, and I'm very lucky, it's self-funded. So I really feel very like I don't have the best salary in the world, but every year I'm sitting here thinking like, well, am I going to have a job because the grant didn't come through? So I have to understand that. But so when people start scrapping for money, but there's just there's also been a lot of wasted money that if it would have given to the right people, a ton of food, if not a ton of food, a ton of education, and getting young people and adults excited about eating real food. Put it in this place.
Absolutely.
You want to go? Okay. Okay, go ahead. I'm thinking about like visibility and how we have like all these pieces in like a potential ecosystem, but we don't like see and know each other. And so from the education to food distribution or like the whole ecosystem, right? And so to me, part of the challenge is how we make the whole system visible, and then explore how to increase our cooperation and our collaboration, which comes back to that relational piece, right? And developing that deep level of trust. And I think like the notion for me, like I found that like co-creation is like if we're going to really build wind in our communities and build power in our communities, it's going to be by co-creation, where it's like, you know, we put our gifts together and we create together. So it's more decentralized, like you was referring to, you know, and like how do we be like leaderful, you know, and I think like to me, I think one of the going back to the triangle to the circle is like we have to know our future is shared. Like sometimes we think that like, oh, I can do whatever I want because look, I'm just me, but nope, like you know, you might think you're not tied to everybody else, you know what I mean? But you know, I got some news for you, you know. And so like the quicker we can understand that it's Ubuntu, that my humanity is tied to your humanity and vice versa, you know, then it's like if our future is shared, then why are we not cooperating together? Like why are our gifts like competing to outshine instead of like using our gifts to create our own opportunity? Because opportunity is not in the structure or even the social arrangements, but it's in our ability to bring our gifts together towards the future we're trying to create. You know, and that's the power we have. We don't gotta ask nobody for it, you know? And so to me, like, it's like, that's where the hope comes in, you know what I mean? Because the more we understand our ability to work together to transform our lived environment, the more hopeful we'll be. And the more hopeful we are, the more we're gonna act towards making that happen, you know?
To answer your hypothetical question as to why we don't collaborate, I think about the situation that we find ourselves in now with, you know, SNAP being defunded, like social programs across the board just getting absolutely slashed. And I think about the strain that puts on you know, the movers and shakers in the food system. And if the food system is people and relationships, the strain that it puts on those relationships all the time. A lot of the food distributors that we work with, I mean, the fact that you're working for free, right? Like the amount of resources that it takes to do some of this work, and the kind of pressure that is on the local food system in order to show up for the people that need to be fed every single day. That pressure, you know, keeps us kind of siloed off at times. It keeps us having to focus on what's right in front of us, and sometimes we don't have the capacity to, you know, co-create in the way that we would if we had the space and the resources and the support in order to do such a thing. And so, you know, it's a really difficult kind of systemic issue to solve at the end of the day, and it kind of starts with policy. But if we had more resources directed towards all of these actors in the food system, they might have more time, mental energy, and just space to work together, like with fidelity, and bring, you know, kind of nuanced, you know, benefits to one another if they have that space.
You may think about something. You know, how we add value, like, you know, because really it is like how are we, you know, we want to, like, I hate to use the word subject, but like, you know, right now I feel like capital is like governing us instead of us governing capital. It's a technology, you know what I mean? So like putting our resources to things that we value to get us to where we're trying to go, right? Economic development and community transformation. But a real practical thing that you just mentioned is we, like, the big beautiful bill, I think was October or something like that. We've lost $100,000 from not having produce perks because like that got dismantled. You know what I mean? Like that is impacting our ability to stay afloat. You know what I mean?
Everybody's ability.
All right, let's give the panelists a round of applause. Now I'm going to turn it over to the audience. We have a couple folks who are itching to answer questions. Ask questions. Right here. Go ahead.
No, wait. No, never mind.
I hear you. We need a food sovereignty fund that's independent of whether the U.S. And the way to move from food literacy to food sovereignty is to create community food and meal sharing options, and quickly. I want to tell you this, that we did a huge meal thing with Lloyd Library, and 136 people were served. One of the illustrations of the Atlantic Passage of the slaves bringing all these really important food crops to us, okay? So out of that residency of that artist's program, there was an enormous community dinner. This is your art form. We can't just go to a fancy restaurant. We have to become that table. You said open table, and that's why I said, no, I'm not. It has to literally become an open table. The more you can create basic events in your community, Peter, you know this, remember how popular us cooking in the garden became? Yeah, cook even in your garden, like we went to build a place to even make food in a garden. Not just for your members, but bring the other people in. It doesn't have to be somebody pays $500 to go to some fancy Whitetails benefit dinner. Come on, y'all do this.
Yes.
Thank you.
And it's safe to go. They want to donate money, they can, everybody eat no matter what.
And the author, the artist of the African Food Diaspora is right here, Mark Harris.
Yes. Thank you.
Let's go front row, and then we'll go middle row.
First of all, I just am so thankful.
Jodine Grundy, ladies and gentlemen.
Ecological Food and Farm Association.
Thank you.
Organic
Right here.
And some other people, I think Foodshed and a bunch of us, yeah. So, we're the oldies here. But we oldies are really, at least I am, I'm almost in tears feeling really encouraged by all of you. Your perseverance, you're really doing it, you're just getting out there and feeding people, for God's sake. I mean, it's just really amazing. Now, nobody's gonna tell me how to do it, I'm gonna do it, I'm just gonna do it.
Yes.
But I want to zoom in on this connection between this tremendous loss of resources. All the people are going hungry because all those SNAP things, all that stuff is slashed, dead. All the grants are going away from nonprofits, are gone. Okay, so you use the word liberation. I want to talk about the word liberation and security together. And I'd like to kind of put it to all of you. What is the opportunity in this loss, but liberation from dependence on grants, on those white table dinners, whatever you want to call it, all of that, you're back to yourselves. But what's the relationship of food security, which we all desperately need to address, to the liberation from dependence on those grants and those systems? So anybody who wants to talk about it?
Okay, so I was trying to teach people how to be dependent, self-dependent years ago, but it wasn't time, and nobody was listening to me. Everybody had food stamps, everybody had extra money, everybody had everything. But let me tell you, when they cut them food stamps, woo-wee. So we got a collaboration with DoorDash. So we was literally sending thousands of bags to people. DoorDash said that they was going to waive all of our fees for 1 month. Man, we was around the clock sending people food and everything. And it seemed like the more food we sent, the more food we ended up with.
Wow.
It never went down. And so now people are ready to listen. Before I got here, I was scheduling all my classes. And so I'm teaching people how to store food, how to stock food, what's the difference, you know? What is items that long-term storage? And so how you can put these items up, how you need to test them, because who wants to get to the food shortage and the stuff you put up is not even good? So you need to know, I need to put some garlic up to go with this, a little salt, some pepper, come up with your spice blends, so that when it's time to cook these things, you can be happy, you know? And even in teaching people about value-added products, okay? And so if you know how to grow something and you can turn it into a product, we are turning the restaurant into a licensed cannery.
Wonderful.
And so you bring your tomatoes up there and your salsa recipe. Let's can it, and now you can sell it. This is gonna bring income in for you. You know, so people have no clue that a lot of the things that you have in your hand is money. But they need to know, because grandma's recipe might be valuable. Go look for it. Grow some food. Fix it up and sell it. Somebody gonna buy it.
Real quick, I just want to respond to that question because I love the question. And I, times are tough right now, like some of the toughest they've been in a very, very long time. And whenever I have conversations with people about the times that we're living through, I always somehow am doing it with a smile, and I always think it's kind of weird that I'm doing it that way, but I'm deeply optimistic about the kind of opportunity that we have in, kind of the waste that's been laid to the old, and the opportunity to build something new that is independent of all of the, like you said, all of those grants and things like that. So, food insecurity is also, it's a tragedy and a great motivator to get people to start thinking about ways to grow their own food, ways to connect with other people and pool food resources. A story that has really informed our work at Garden of Joy, which you both are very familiar with, is the Black Panthers Free Breakfast for Children program. And the power that program had in 1971, the Panthers were feeding more kids across the nation than the entire state of California was at the time, just by pooling resources and having conversations and managing relationships. And after the federal government dismantled the Black Panther Party, the free school breakfast program came a few years later, right? And so that's a direct line from community organization to policy creation. And we have that opportunity now that the government is failing us to show the government of the future what we as the people need and can do for ourselves, right? And so, yeah, for me, that's garden table education. It's teaching kids to grow their own food. And then hopefully we have community gardens all over the place, right? Like, hopefully we start renewing our green spaces because of this immense need that we have for food, created by this massive deficit. So.
Gentleman right here.
Thank you. No one knows me. I'm not part of the ecosystem. Paul, I know he just pulled me off the street. First, let me thank you all for coming and spending some time this afternoon. All of you bring unique perspectives and insights, and it's very interesting. All of you tend to work on the front end. Okay, you're planting, you're feeding, you're educating. My question is about the back end of the food process. We waste 40% of the food that we serve every day. It's thrown in the garbage, it's eliminated, it's prepared and never used. Now I realize that that's not where you live in the ecosystem, but clearly for all the work you're doing on the front end, you're frustrated with what's going on the back end. So I'm curious to get your thoughts and your perspectives about what can be done to reduce the extent of food wastage on the back end in that ecosystem.
One thought I have on that is, again, it goes to decentralization. Because a lot of the waste comes from these huge farms sending the stuff across the country, then it goes into the grocery stores, and what doesn't sell. Some of it gets sent out to pantries, the soup, or any number of different places, the last mile and stuff. But, it's an incredible amount of waste. And so I think that's one way to kind of look at how can we kind of reduce that. Because I think if a smaller business is trying to, I'm not talking about tiny, even like, some of these, like Jungle Gyms or some of these smaller chains, they're going to be much more mindful about waste and ordering and organizing their food systems. Because what happens, I think, is that when things become corporate, they become detached and they're just looking at spreadsheets. And they can say, well, this amount of waste is acceptable because, we're still making this much money, as opposed to someone, their family is dependent on their business making money. Farmers don't waste anything. Trust me. You're talking about making tomato sauce. But that's your second tomatoes. There's nothing wrong with them. They're just misshapen. So like everything is used.
Can I add to that? Shame on big business. Okay? Shame on them, because these places that he's mentioning who, that we get a whole bunch of rescued food.
Yes.
But guess what? 90% of it ain't no good. You know, our compost bins is running over. We don't even have no more space. So we end up still having to throw the stuff away because certain big businesses, they write it off and say, hey, we gave this amount of money, but we can't use it. It's rotten when we get
So
to
they
it.
give you crap.
Right. Yeah.
And so as a person who runs a nonprofit, I'm kind of handcuffed because if I say anything and I mention these people, then we won't get no food. We won't even get the 5% that the little bit of stuff, you know. So that was the reason why we was trying to grow more food. We was trying to acquire more land. The more land we have, you know, we can grow our own, and then we don't have to worry about that them rotten potatoes that stank when we get there, and them onions that's soft. Like, can you imagine putting your hand in an onion and it goes like this? But you just deliver.
More than imagine.
So you eat the same food too. Yeah.
Well, but that brings up another thing that's really interesting about this sort of like large grocery store chains or whatever giving away the food. I was once knew a situation with a farmer where a nonprofit that supposedly distributed food kept having him come over and take bags of ketchup that were meant for dispensers in a fast food restaurant, baby food, all this crap. And I know that that nonprofit was telling everybody we distributed X number of thousands of pounds of food, including like even within our network. Some organizations are big enough that there is that kind of graft almost going on. And that's again like what I'm thinking, like I know everything can't be a staff of 5 people, but we've got to figure out how to get the money to the people who are really doing something, but also, truth. Because these business, whether it be like some fast food chain is donating this food, this ketchup someplace, they're taking a tax write-off.
And
so they're stealing money. They're really stealing money from us.
Yeah.
Welcome to capitalism.
Yeah, thanks.
And this is for the lady in the hat. I love your outfit. But how do people find out about your classes online, and how do they find out about getting their extra vegetables canned by your business? And how much does it usually cost them to get it done?
Any and everything we do is free.
So
Everything.
you guys will can people's extra food for free, give it back to them?
We ain't even got there yet. And so, in order to get away from grants, that's why we're turning the restaurant into this cannery. And so we still got to get an electrician to come in and put the new lines in so we can plug up the dehydrators and the freeze dryers. And so look for that probably the end of 2026, early 2027. But right now, what we're doing is teaching people how to can. Teaching people how to preserve, teaching people how to take this, and put it together and make it taste good. And so today, I just finally got the dates. So starting next month, and I know right now we're going to be at the East Price Hill Library, and then we're also going to do some online classes like Zoom. Probably will be on Facebook Live and different things like that. And so basically right now I would say follow Isaiah 55 or myself on Facebook, because I forget to put everything on Instagram and all of that other stuff. But I just hit Facebook and boop, and it's there.
So is it Isaiah 55 your nonprofit?
I'm founder.
Okay. And your property that you do your garden on, is that in Price Hill as well?
No, we're putting a garden in Roberts Academy. So
That's on Grand Avenue.
Yeah. So, but we have a garden in Evanston. We have a private garden in Mount Auburn, and we also just bought 20 acres of land in Indiana. And so we're gonna grow.
Good for you.
Question right here.
Yeah, I live in Price Hill. I've done a lot of work with, I volunteer for a lot of organizations now and stuff, but I used to volunteer for Enright Urban Eco Village, which you probably know. They're no longer really around anymore. And I started a side business where I write website content, and as kind of who I am, my content pretty much gravitated toward being about gardening. And so, articles how to grow tomatoes, how to grow peppers, how to grow mustard plant, how to grow perennials like written over time, stuff like that. And I have a whole stock of articles, and some of them I'm allowed to use again, even though I sold them wherever. And I just was wondering if you guys have websites that can use that kind of content.
Yes.
I'm really excited about hearing all this.
Hold up, Alan.
Thank you.
Community organization.
All right, so you all gonna see each other after the show. Question here in the back.
Yeah, I so appreciate the work you guys do. I've had the privilege of working with a couple of you, but I'm just wondering how you guys take care of yourselves. You know, you guys are obviously giving so much to the community. I'd love to hear how you succeed.
Asking some real questions here.
That's what you really want to know.
That's a good question.
Because I love me, I pamper things.
Yes.
I gotta order something to review.
All the time.
I would say, I think that's an excellent question for folks like us and people that work in the food system, because it's really tiring work. And you know, something that I've been talking to a lot of the cooks that I work with all the time. Because, you know, if you're a line cook, for example, you're working like a 10, 12-hour day, kind of, like awful pay, and, you know, your body is a temple, right? You know, you got to treat it with care and respect, but you don't always have the time to, you don't always have the money to. Me and the other cooks have been talking about thinking of ourselves more kind of like we're professional athletes in the way that we care for ourselves at the end of the day. So for me, that's, you know, when I get home from work, that's as simple as like going on a walk and, you know, taking a moment to kind of slow down and sip a cup of tea. At the Garden of Joy, we make just a boatload of tea every single day, and so that kind of helps me calm down. As well, you know, within our kind of education program, we have a really big kind of focus on mindfulness and slowing down, taking some deep breaths. We do that with our kids a couple times every single day, and just that little bit of time every day has been surprisingly helpful. You know, how helpful it is to just breathe and slow down. But it's really hard to do so on a regular basis. And I wish that I did it more, but I think it's, you know, it's the simple stuff. It's going on walks, breathing, drinking water.
Taking a nap.
Taking a nap.
I really appreciate that question, because that's something I'm struggling with, I would say. And I think like a byproduct of a capitalistic system is like, you know, like I would feel like I'm letting people down if I'm not always working, you know, and that's like it's astronomically like not true, you know what I mean? But like, you know, it's harder to live that out, you know. And so to me, you know, I'm a fan of Grace D. Boggs, and she'll talk about how evolution is a revolution, right? And so it's like how am I evolving as a person to participate greater? And so it's like kind of like shifting my faith that it's like, oh, actually, like working on myself is like is actually better for the whole.
Yes.
And even showing an example, because like if people modeled my life, we collapse. You know what I mean? So it's like how are we like modeling the things that we're actually trying to be? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think taking care of yourself for the sake of others is like the biggest lesson that I've learned over the past year, because you can't show up if you're not healthy.
Me, I don't work on Saturdays and Sundays. You don't work Saturdays and Sundays, but because I love Alan. Don't ask me to do nothing on Saturdays and Sundays.
I do want to hear from Barb and Peter on this question.
Well, I do get made fun of at work when I bring in my lunch, and it's a bowl of raw vegetables, like 4 cups of raw vegetables. And so I do eat a lot of vegetables. I eat them mostly raw. I don't eat a whole lot of meat because it's so expensive. So eggs, I eat a lot of eggs, avocados, which I hate to say I eat avocados, but you know, because they come from another country or they are shipped. I like to eat locally, so I do eat. I eat locally, and a lot of the seconds from Gorman last year I took home, and I have quarts of pickled zucchini. You know, I still have a bunch of pickled zucchini, or daikon radish. I make daikon radish pickles with turmeric, and so I do a lot of canning, and I eat it. I eat my own food, and I have a dog and she gets walked twice a day in the woods. So I walk in the woods, which is amazing, so I have fresh air, I've got oxygen and stuff coming in, and I do budget myself that I get a massage once a month. I go to the chiropractor once a month, I've done that. I've done those things for, gosh, 31 years now.
Yes.
I have a physical therapist for my feet that I go to twice a month. So I do spend some money on my body just to take care of me, but eating well, I don't eat a lot of processed stuff because I don't believe in it. So, I mean, when it comes to candy, lower sweets, all that goes out the window. I am addicted to sugar.
Magnesium deficiency.
One more, and then we'll turn it back for a couple more questions.
Well, for me, it's the only thing that keeps me sane is working with people in the garden. I mean, so it's like I'm still getting more out of it than myself. And then also I get a lot of, with Hum Out a Song, I get a lot out of working with Karen. But my wife Vicki has a homeschool program. And so although I'm not actively a participant in it, hearing the children on the land, knowing that they're growing stuff, they're observing, they're cooking, it's just very life affirming. But I'm getting older, so I'm getting creaky and a little bit more cranky.
We appreciate you sharing those words of wisdom. We have time for a couple more questions. Let's go right here.
If you have 2 boys, how old are they and how do you keep the sugar away from them?
They are presently 14. We have some sugar sometimes. I don't want to control them and their food intake. I don't want to create a eating disorder. So, they help in the kitchen, and I taught them cutting skills at age 3 because being in the kitchen with them is really important. So.
That's fantastic.
Right here.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm assuming everyone is really thinking organic here, and there's a lot of critters in the environment that would like to share their produce. I'm wondering about how do you work with the children around the reality that they need to eat too. Animals, any kind of animals, birds, whatever it is, bugs.
I always say plant something for them too. Right. And then I definitely believe in planting some really hot peppers.
That's the way to go.
And I think, we're kind of looking towards our summer program to spend more time kind of talking about just the food system broadly, but the animals that make up the food system and kind of the lives that they have, and the extent to which, we try our best to talk about the real relational quality of food, right? When a piece of produce lands, on your table, it came from all over the place. People had to grow it, people had to pick it, people had to distribute it. When there's a piece of meat that we're eating for dinner, that piece of meat used to be alive, it used to be running around with its family and all those sorts of things. And so, as much as we can, we like to kind of emphasize the extent that, our food, we should be grateful for the life that it had beforehand, the animals that, it feeds out in the wild, the animals that perhaps we're eating that night. But we should spend more time kind of talking about, at least in our garden, the extent, planting things for the local environment in a restorative way. So I love the question, very inspirational.
Can I apologize to Peter for getting mad at him for letting go the giant groundhog that I was fattening for 5 years now? I get it now.
Look at the cracks on it, I didn't drown them. I think but that idea of, insect pressure, animal pressure, in our gardens we use a fencing system, try and do it that way the best we can, but I do trap and illegally sometimes relocate. Sometimes I do kill an animal, but it's also a reality of farming, but it encourages the children, I would never include them in that process. Some families, if they grew up on a farm, they get around butchering chickens. The reality, or it's a family that hunts. That's one thing. But most children these days are sort of isolated from that, and I believe that, It's not something you push on somebody.
Right.
You know, when they start inquiring about where did that groundhog go at a certain age, you know, maybe a little more truthful. Yeah, that's it. But I mean, it is, you know, insect pressure or anything, you know, it's like picking up squash bugs. I don't take them and put them outside the garden. I squish them or I put them in a bucket of soapy water. So if you want to think poorly of me, that's okay, but, you know. There's compromises to be made. I'm also not a vegan, so maybe that's
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you for coming. Let's give our